You are definitely been a really big person in my life to say that you've taught me about a lot of things as far as galas and networking and how to be present, especially because the Yonkers area I've dominated. If I wanted a political career in Yonkers, I could have it. That's how much I know that I dominated that sector. But personally, for me, coming to Newburgh 7 years ago, and establishing roots here as well, for me was very scary. And who knew that, one body pump or one alloy class would lead to this friendship that I cherish so much.
Exactly.
And with that, I want to say this is Antaxis. And today we have Julianna Lobiondo, lawyer extraordinaire, and my dear friend joining me today. And today we're discussing divorce and taxes.
And taxes.
Finally.
Yes.
After a while of us talking about this, it's finally happening. I'm so excited. So, before we dive into the meaty stuff, I do want to shed a little light on you in the sense that you have this saying about yourself that is my favorite thing. And that is your attorney's divorce attorney. That's what you call yourself.
Right. I say, call the attorney that represents divorce attorneys. So what that means is sort of I heard someone say, if I have, let's say, a certain illness, tuberculosis, take me to the surgeon that the tuberculosis surgeons go to. And that's sort of what it is with, I have represented not only people in all walks of life, but attorneys and divorce attorneys. So you'd think that the divorce attorneys know who to call. That's what I'm trying to express there. But
because you're that good. You're basically saying I'm that good that other divorce attorneys call me.
I've been around a long time, but we represent people, and I also do a lot of pro bono work.
You do.
I'm also bilingual. I'm not a native speaker, but that's something that I've done with my language skills. So.
And you also have dabbled in more than two languages.
Yes.
You are conversational in how many languages?
Spanish, I'm bilingual. I can speak,
you are definitely
read, write,
bilingual, yes.
and French, I'm conversational.
Okay.
That has helped me in exactly 0 cases.
But has it helped you in Paris?
Years,
has it helped you in Paris?
But it is, yes. But it is nice when you travel. So.
See, Julianna and I actually had a conversation once, and I said, I refuse to go to Paris until I have some sort of survival French. And then you invite me to take a French class. And I'm going to say it. The only thing I walked away from that French class is one thing, was to say the number 19.
Okay.
And that was because it sounds like these nuts when you say it. I'm being honest.
You're not wrong.
It's the only thing that I took away from that class. But it was so much fun, and we did it with a good friend of ours, and we had croissants, and our teacher was so lovely. I enjoyed it so much.
It's a social experience.
But you're such a very big community person, and that's one of the things I love about you. But enough about that. Let's get into some of the things that we want to talk about, because it is my belief, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to start Antaxis, is that yes, I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to have some sort of tea time and, be bitchy and rant and have my moment. But at the same time, I did want it to educate our followers and our community in the sense of the things that, I don't know about this, or I assume that this is how it is, and people don't know that assumption is not the real deal. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you was that there is a common gray area out here where people have it when it comes to divorce, that income is just a bottom line figure. And we had a conversation where you described it and we were like, well, we have to discuss on how that income flows. And can you elaborate on that? Because I feel like that's one of the main things people are scared of. I know, again, in my table, right, where I'm the accountant, people sit down with me. People confuse it with therapy, and we've had this conversation before where I've told you my struggles, and you've very much, as the mentor that you are, have always told me to just wait, no, stop them in their tracks, because again, you're not getting paid for that, and you're not a therapist, and sometimes it feels like I'm a therapist, and it feels like so exhausting, right? Hence why I wanted to go on camera and say, you know what, let me rant about the things that I know that I can rant about because I've lived them. And one of the things that I noticed with clients, friends, associates, family members is that when the D word comes up, their first mindset goes to income. And what is the flow of income when it comes to divorce?
So it's a great question. I do want to say nothing that I say here is legal advice. Please don't rely on
I'm not a
anything I've
lawyer
said.
and I do not play one on TV. She is a lawyer, but these are legal tips.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
These are just tips, and what I'm going to talk to you about today are things that anyone could independently research and find out for themselves. So the flow of income, it's a great way to phrase it. When someone comes into the office, you're really only talking about a few ways of receiving income the day that you come in. So you may have a job and you get W-2 income. You may have a side gig with a delivery food type place and you get a 1099. You may have investments and you get a K-1. And I think as an accountant, you
100%.
this is, but after you walk out of the office, there are going to be different flows of income, both in and out. So if you're what we call the payor, that is the person who's going to be paying out income, your income is going to outflow. And if you are the payee, then your income from the divorce is going to be incoming. And so that in and of itself should be pretty straightforward.
Right.
But this is and taxes. We're
Right.
also going to think about the tax consequences.
Correct.
So the main ways that the average person facing divorce is going to have new flows of income are child support, which is paid from a payor to a payee, and that is for the support of a child or children. And the purpose is to cover food, clothing, shelter. That in New York State is going to be set by a formula. The formula is tied to the person's taxable income, the payor, as well as the number of children. And there is a formula, it's fairly straightforward. But that child support has no tax consequences.
Right.
So the person who's receiving it is not going to receive a W-2 or a K-1 or a 1099 and is not going to
Be
report it as
taxable.
income and
Correct.
pay taxes on it. Similarly, the person who's paying it is not going to receive any tax breaks. It is getting paid from their post-tax income to the other party. That other party is essentially a trustee for the children for purposes of that income. The other form of flowing of income is going to be in New York State. For some people, it's not for all, spousal support. Spousal support is paid by a payor to a payee. It is in 2025, it's a more complicated formula. It's nothing I'm going to sit with a pencil and figure out. We pay a lot of money for programs it's basically calculus.
Same. Same.
Yeah.
I always sit there and wonder, whoever came up with the tax code, I'm like, did you not have a life to make this complicated?
That person then went and talked to the person who invented spousal
There
support
you
in New
go.
York State.
There you go. Definitely.
Definitely some time on their hands. So that one you probably want to visit with an attorney in order to get the proper calculations for spousal support. That's an interesting flow of income. So I've been an attorney for 35 years. For the majority of the years I was practicing, spousal support was a very important piece, and we could play around with it because it was taxable to the person receiving it
Correct.
and tax deductible
To the person
to the
paying it.
person paying it
Right.
at both the federal and New York state level. That has changed
Correct.
in recent years. And so the tax deduction is gone. That has impacted at the federal level. It's still taxable or tax deductible at the New York state level, but that's a much smaller piece of it. So it's set forth in a formula in New York State, and also set in the formula is the number of years that the payor is going to pay it and the payee is going to receive it, and that is tied to the length of the marriage.
Okay.
So longer marriages, you're looking at a much longer spousal support receipt or paying out.
Right.
There is still on the books in New York State something called lifetime spousal support.
Really?
And that, yes. So that is a much rarer recipient.
Okay.
But the recipient, when it comes to lifetime spousal support, is going to be a candidate who is in a very long marriage, put a lot of contributions into the payor spouse's career. And usually we're talking about the presence of children as well. And yeah, that person, that candidate is, with the help of a good attorney, going to be the recipient of lifetime spousal support.
So is that something that we would that if you're in the divorce phase, like you would getting ready for that, like, and I'm sure in your years of practice, you've had spouses saying, "Well, I built him. He wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for me. I did all of these things," and you hear all these stories, and then again, the misconception always falls as that there's a percentage or there's something along that. But now that you're bringing this up, there has to be an argument of what did that spouse contribute to the payor, essentially, their career, to actually say, well, I deserved a lifetime of it. That sounds like something that's going to be very difficult to prove.
Yeah, it is. So for the most part, and it's interesting that you would phrase it that way because I hear it so commonly, and it can be kind of heartbreaking to hear some of these things. But we do it's a formula.
Yeah.
And we do the calculation and we show it to the client, and they will say, "Is that it? Is that all I'm worth?" And it's not a reflection, of course,
Right.
of a person's worth. It's a reflection of the income in the household
Right.
and the formula that New York State gave us. But when I first started practicing, there was no formula.
Oh.
So every single case,
One in lifetime.
single case, well, if they got any spousal support or not, it was up for debate. It was a fight, potentially a trial, every single time.
Wow.
So nobody came in guaranteed spousal support, and many times the person paying would fight really hard
So just like
so
with
that there would be no spousal support.
just like with tax laws, over the years, reform within the legal system has changed in order to make a mathematical, reasonable number of what it is to pay someone alimony.
Correct. But the difference is the tax laws happen at the federal level. It's uniform. You go
Correct.
anywhere.
And New York is infamous in
This is-
decoupling from federal law.
Well, there's no federal law for spousal support.
Got
It's
it.
up to the states.
Understood.
So in New York State, yes, it is
Right.
a formula for spousal support. It's relatively recent.
Okay.
But in other states, there is no formula.
Wow.
If you want it, you're going to have to fight it
I
out.
fight it out.
And so, yes, New York State is evolving. When I first started practicing, so that was in 1990, the custody laws were still written with she. So when she gets custody,
Right.
when she, and so eventually they took the pronouns out of it. When I first started practicing, there was no same-sex marriage. That changed in 2010. I remember that. So what we would do is when same-sex couples came in, we would write prenups for them.
Wow.
That essentially covered what we would do in a divorce case. But that's really all that we had.
And it's almost like I go back to now my fields, because whenever I have a client that walks in and they'll be two friends and they say, we want to start a business together, we want to form a partnership. Well, New York State, there is no requirement to have a written partnership agreement. New York State will acknowledge it if it's considered a verbal agreement. You and I shake hands today and we say we're partners and boom, that's it. There's nothing in writing. But I always advise against it. I always say, you guys really should go talk to a lawyer, because what you guys have to talk about is a divorce. And when they look at me, I'm like, the divorce? Yeah. What are we going to do when the partnership divorces? When does it dissolve? Who keeps what? Because a lot of the times when I get those consultations, I tell them, listen, a partnership is like a marriage. You guys have a name, a brand, a website, a phone number, and and a tax ID number. And Internal Revenue Code says that in a partnership, once the partnership ceases to exist, the tax ID number has to go with it. And when you go into the financial side of it, that tax ID number is the equivalent of a social security number. It can build business credit, like a person builds credit. So do you really want to lose that, all the years that you put in under that? So it's very interesting how some of the laws are very similar when it comes to that type of formality, if I can say.
Well, not only is it similar, but it's amazing that you would have picked up on that and drawn the connection, because in point of fact, partnership law came first.
Wow.
Right? So partnership law came from, our laws are based on the laws of England, the assizes.
Ooh.
This book.
Oh my
is
God. And we will show you this
ancient,
book, guys.
This is the ancient book of laws that came over on the Mayflower, one of those ships. So that's one thing that the English did, is they imported their laws. Our common law system is based on the laws of England. New York State partnership law goes back to the laws of England, and the equitable distribution law in New York State is based on the New York State Partnership Act.
Wow.
So literally, what you are supposed to do when you are dissolving a marriage, you are following the same formula as dissolving a legal partnership. And if I were to be able to tap everyone on the head and remove the emotions, it's exactly what we would do. So when you dissolve a partnership, you are ideally going to sell off all of the assets and pay off all of the debts. It would take you, a few days. You are done. And that's all that dissolving a partnership is.
There's no emotional.
And that's all that the equitable distribution law is in New York State. That's all you're doing.
Right.
So a lot of it is managing. Some things are not so easily sold off.
Right.
So a marital asset is defined as any asset that's acquired during the marriage, regardless of title. We're not a title state. And separate property is defined as any asset that you as a party owned prior to the marriage or after the commencement of a divorce action. And there are some other things that come in as separate property, but they're pretty clearly defined in the equitable distribution law.
So, which means that because I had nothing before I got married, that if I leave him, if he leaves me and we get divorced, everything's up for grabs because everything was acquired during the marriage.
Well, we're assuming that your spouse also acquired everything during the marriage.
Oh, yeah. We were both broke. We were both broke. Okay? The closest to a designer bag that we had came from Marshall's, okay? Which, hey, I love me a good Marshall's run. But together we started buying Coach bags and we graduated to the big leagues from there.
I totally relatable. Uncomfortably relatable.
Yeah.
Yes. So in
Okay.
that scenario, we have two broke kids, right? Teenagers and out of college. They come together with nothing. They build everything
Everything.
during the course of the marriage. One person comes in to see me and I say, please tell me you have a prenup. There's no prenup. So everything that was acquired during the marriage,
Right.
assuming they didn't inherit property from relatives, etc., is presumptively marital property. The presumption runs.
You mentioned something that actually is something that's been weighing on my mind, not because of me personally, because my family's broke too, but because of the client of mine mentioned this something. So what happens? I had a conversation similar to this a couple of weeks ago. What happens if you and I are married, and then a relative passes away and says,
I'm seeing lavender.
"I'm seeing lavender marriages." We're married. I come into an inheritance, and then we get divorced a year later. Is the inheritance part of a marital property?
So
Because
I'm not going to give specifics
right, but
because
just
we don't want to say
right.
advice.
No, yeah.
But let's talk about what the laws provide.
All right.
Right? So the law provides, we talked about what marital property is. Separate property is defined by the statute. It's extremely clear. What you acquired prior to the marriage, what you acquired after the marriage, that's after you started divorce action or signed a separation agreement. Separate property also includes any property that I, spouse A, clearly inherited during the course of the marriage.
Right.
Any gifts that I, spouse A, received during the marriage, and a few other weird little things such as lottery winnings, any personal injury compensation that I received.
Would all be
And
considered separate.
these are separate.
Got it.
And gambling winnings. So these are the combinations. Ideally, spouse A, I receive a large inheritance. The first thing that I want to do is move to protect it from creditors, but from a divorce. So I, as spouse A, if I receive a significant or any inheritance that I wish to protect, I'm now going to move it into an asset that is in my name alone. That is a smart move.
Right.
When I, as spouse A, say, well, we've really only got, for a lot of investments, we only have one liquid bank account, happens to be in both names, but I trust spouse B. Spouse B is a great person. And so I move it into our joint account. That's very problematic.
Right.
And it may very well lose its separate property character.
Understood.
So I, as the recipient of the inheritance, want to be careful. And, it's always a good idea to consult with an attorney when you have any questions about any of these items. That doesn't mean that you're headed for a divorce or a separation or it's not a good marriage. It's just a consultation. And frankly, a lot of people come in here and I never see them again.
Right.
They just have some questions about assets.
Correct.
It's
And
nothing wrong with that.
It's so good that you. The reason why I asked that question is because here's where I tied the end taxes with it. Right. This person's not getting divorced, but let's say that spouse A inherits a piece of real estate, a house from a great aunt who passed away, and she was next in line to inherit it. She inherited this house. They want to sell it. So now, under IRS Code Section 121, how do I treat? Obviously, I know the answer to this, but that's the question. Is there going to be an exclusion of $500,000 because they're married? Or is the exclusion only going to be $250,000 because it's inherited to only one person? It wasn't inherited by the couple. It was during the course of the marriage. So like we're talking capital gain tax bill on a bigger level. And that's why I think it's one of those things that I would say, yes, if you're looking at divorce and you have inheritance, consult an attorney. Even if you're not getting divorced but you're married and you receive an inheritance, you have to consult a professional accountant, a professional CPA, someone in the tax business that knows what they're talking about, because again, that word inheritance, that word gift tax, it's a very gray area. And the law, one of the things I love about the Internal Revenue Code, and I use love sarcastically, is that there's rules to everything. This is the law, but there's every law has exceptions. So it's always except, and then there's a long list of exceptions. So it's very much one of those things that in both fields, that again, like you said, we're not going to break it down in 20 minutes. It's really more of a per situation topic, but that's very interesting in the fact
And
that
that really brings up another good point, which is a good professional, whether you go in to consult with a lawyer or an accountant, is working with other professionals. So if someone comes in to see me and has questions of that magnitude, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get you on speakerphone or
right,
bring you into a Zoom conference to bring in your expertise regarding, well, not only that, but how do you avoid the capital gains tax on
right,
this? And that's when you have these big life events, divorce, inheritance, death of a loved one, you have got to get yourself in to see one professional. And that one professional should also have the contacts within other industries
correct,
to get you information about.
correct,
So I absolutely offer no tax advice, but
correct.
I will get you in touch with my tax professional who's going to give you the advice
It's
you need.
always something that I have two big sayings that I say. Don't fix it if it's not broken. So if you have an existing relationship with a professional, don't switch because I gave you a recommendation or because Juliana gave you a recommendation. If it's working, don't fix it. When it breaks or when you're questioned, you're like, wait, I didn't get the response I thought I was going to receive, then you know where I am. And my second thing I say, not only with my clients or when I'm public speaking, is I am not a lawyer and I do not play one on TV. So I need you to take every word out of my mouth that is considered as not legal advice because I am not in that position to give that advice out. Um, and it's something really big in the Latino community because I feel like that you speak Spanish, I immediately trust you, and they have to stop doing that. It's something that again I've experienced that from a young age, and as I grew within my industry, it's one of those things that's it's always really concerning, especially when it comes to something that I want to ask you next. We we talked about child support, and we know that child support is not taxable. But there's something that we spoke about once before that I thought was very interesting. That you told me once child support is not for the other parent, it's for the child.
Correct.
Do you want to speak on that? Because I feel like there's a mindset out there that says, well, if I say I don't want child support, that would give me a one up in court because I'm saying I just want custody of my child and I don't want the other spouse to give me a dime because I can just provide. So this should just be suffice to show the courts that I can be the parent that comes in and takes everything over. Is that the case?
So it's that is for some reason some people will have guilt about receiving child support. So sometimes I will have a client say, well, I, yes, of course I want primary custody, but I'm not going to take any money. I'm not going to take any child support because whatever the reason may be. And, when I pick myself up off the floor, I say, listen, I understand perhaps you have sufficient assets and resources, but this is not about you. Child support is for the children. It is to support your household. Technically, it's for the food, clothing, and shelter for the child or children, but guess what? Your 8-year-old is not paying a mortgage. You are, right? Your 10-year-old is not going to ShopRite. You are. And so you need to take the money and use it for food, clothing, and shelter. Or there's so many expenses for children. There's really no shortage. Use it for summer camp. Use it for the 529 college account.
Right.
Use it for enrichment, whatever you want. But yeah, don't leave the money on the table because it's not yours. and don't feel bad about taking child support. It's for the children.
Right. Yeah, that's the best because again, child support is it's not a taxable transaction, but it doesn't mean that it is not a tax transaction. You mentioned the 529 plan. You know, if I have full custody of my child and I am collecting $1,000 a month from my child's parent and I don't need it, I can provide for my child and good for me. Well, open a 529 plan.
Right.
Dump that in there.
Right.
You are the account holder. You
Right.
get the tax benefit of participating as long as it's a New York State 529 plan. As a New York resident, you get to pick up the tax deduction on the New York State tax return. So there is, you know, many things that you can do with that money. Not taking it is the biggest mistake. It really is.
Absolutely. And there are ways that we can structure things. So many years ago, 30 years ago, I was at a law firm, and my amazing mentor, I learned so much from him, Phil Schatz. He had a client, and she was in a, they came from a situation of wealth. Her husband was a very successful physician who had many other positions within the hospital. She was well provided for, and she was entitled to spousal support. There were 4 children. She said, you know what? Don't pay me spousal support, but I want something in writing that says that you will educate all 4 children, including if they want to go to medical school, graduate school. And she waived her spousal support in favor of that. So, is this something we recommended? No. We were able to get her a good enough settlement that she was in a position to do that. She didn't want to have to worry about the kids' education, etc. It worked out great for everybody. And so there are ways that we can structure. People often think, well, I must do it this way. I must do it, and I have bad feelings about it. But when you come in to see a divorce attorney or you come in to see me as a mediator, there are many things, as long as everyone's provided for, we're not breaking any laws and violating the Constitution, there are many different ways we can structure things.
Right.
You just can't think of it because it's you, right? And you're in the moment and you're in the situation.
Right.
But that's what we do as
Like
professionals.
you mentioned, if you can just take away the emotional aspects of it, which is something really hard to do.
Sure, it's
It's
impossible. And that's
impossible
why
to
you
do.
hire professionals. I
Correct.
mean, you're in it. The client is in it. They need
And
someone to help them.
my thing is that I've been blessed enough to know you from a personal standpoint. The person and the lawyer are two different personalities. They're two different people.
You're right.
And
I'm the same with,
and
and you're my accountant. Same.
yeah, I mean, and it's a lot of it's very interesting to as professionals that people don't see that. We started off with a joke, right? I became a lawyer because I just wanted to be rich and
And powerful.
and powerful. But in reality, it's a really difficult job in the professional industry to be able to have that separation. It's one of the things that I as a professional I feel like I struggle with. But we talked about a lot of things, and one of the things I can agree with you on, well, that is law, in divorce, in tax, property for us is not something tangible that you can touch, right? Property is this chair I'm sitting on, the cash that's in the checking account, the cash in the savings account, the shares and the stocks that I own, and it's the retirement account. And as we get to that age, right? You've been married for 20, 30 years, and now you're looking and facing divorce. And now you start thinking, well, I'm gonna retire. I've had this happen to me in the last 3 years, where I've had couples, and my thing is like, well, I had a client that got divorced, and a year later he passed away. My thing is like, it's like, it's life. It's life.
It is.
You
It's
know,
one of the big life
it's
events.
life. It's a life event. And the retirement is always something that everybody talks about. The
Very emotional
pension,
topic.
the 401k, the 403b, the SEP that's sitting there. And then in our conversations in the past, we talked about qualified domestic order. Now, what is qualified domestic order in relations to that asset or that property?
Sure. So, pension and retirement sounds on the face of it like the unsexiest thing alive. But in fact, it's very, very emotional in my field. And a lot of people will come in and say, well, I can get the divorce, but my spouse says, as long as I don't touch their spouse B, right? As long as I don't touch spouse B's retirement. And I say, well, they're going to have to go pound salt because we're going to touch that retirement. We're going to touch it. We're going to stab it. We're going to cut it. And we're giving half of the marital share to you. And so we talked about what marital property is and how it's then equitably distributed. We talked about the fact that New York State is not a title state. And what that means is if spouse B is accruing pension, retirement, 403B, 401k, 457, whatever the retirement vehicle may be,
Right.
during the course of the marriage, it is a marital asset.
Right.
And that is true for both spouses.
Correct.
So if we're lucky, what happens is spouse A has a great pension, spouse B has a great pension. They're the same companies. They both work for IBM. We can see the number. They're exactly equal. Spouse A, please go on your merry way and keep your pension. Spouse B, same for you.
Right.
Typically, that's not what happens.
No. I experienced the opposite, where the receiving spouse gets awarded half. And then they'll pull it all out. And then look at me confused when I tell them that they have a crazy tax bill.
So that is, yes, that is an issue. So we have different types of retirements. When I first started, we didn't have 401k, so it was easier in a sense. Someone worked for the NYPD, they worked for IBM, didn't have 401ks. It was a defined benefit plan.
Right.
Central Hudson, wherever you work, New York State, it was a defined benefit pension plan, which is to say you don't know how much is in the plan. There's a lot of other people in New York State working as a teacher or whatever your job is, and you're going to get a defined benefit, a certain amount in the future. You can't touch it, nor can your creditors, nor can your spouse. End of story.
Right.
The economic environment changed for employers, and now it is much more common to see what we call portable pensions, portable retirement. So that's the 401k, the 457B. You can see it. You can get a statement. You can see what the number is.
You borrow against it. You can hardship withdraw it. You can, yeah.
And you can pay a little penalty and pay taxes on it.
Correct.
And so what happens is we're still using the same laws and the same rules, but we're applying them to very different vehicles. So the law has always been, since before I started practicing, if I'm spouse A and spouse B has the retirement plan, I'm entitled to 50% of the marital share of the retirement plan. And so sounds easy, right? So it's a little formula. It's for divorce attorneys. It's pretty easily defined. But what that means is if we have a more traditional pension like New York State teacher, that's going to be the portion that was acquired during the marriage. You worked there for 30 years and you've been married for 10 of those years. 1/3 of that is marital. You're entitled to 50% of that, essentially 1/6. You hire someone, within your divorce judgment, it says the way that you get this money is there's a qualified domestic relations order, and that gets signed by a judge. And when it comes time for everyone's retirement, you get your share, spouse gets their share. With the portable retirements, yes, you're still going through the same formula, same law, same quadro, and you then are going to get your share rolled over from spouse B's 401k into your 401k, and now you can add that to your retirement package and everyone is happy.
And if for whatever reason spouse B does not have a 401k, this is the time to make sure to connect with a really good financial advisor to make sure saying don't just empty that money out and get hit and lose up to potentially 30% of it to taxes. Let's
Well, you can't.
get that
That's not what
into-
happens in divorce law. you don't take the money out.
Right.
It has to get rolled over. So you have to open an IRA. So if you're
So
the
it's
recipient,
right.
you could just go into any bank and open
Right.
an IRA,
But
and it
that's
gets
where I was
rolled
getting at.
there.
That's what I was getting at because
Yeah.
again, you're going to be forced to just do something for the sake of doing something. Where it, I wanted to go back to the whole. You have to have your team. You have to have your good accountant, your good lawyer. You have to have your good financial planner because if you're experiencing this, do you want to default yourself into just going into any bank and just getting an IRA quickly to just do what you have to do because again the emotional state we talked about that, but if you have the pieces in place prior to this, having those relationships established, then you know the person to call. I'm going to call Joe
Right.
Schmo and say, Joe Schmo, I'm in this situation. We've already been in talks. We've already been working on things. This is happening. What are my options? And then he will get in touch with your person of, your accountant, and then you guys are going to run the best scenario possible. During this process, there's so much emotions at stake that visions can be blurred, which is more of like, don't wait till you get to that deed table. Establish those connections now
Right.
is what I would say from a personal standpoint.
That's the ideally, yes, you're going to be leaning on the professionals to help you out at a time when a lot of people are kind of raw. They're just trying to get through it. They're not really thinking about a lot of the details. Yeah, it is important to have the connections, have the professionals. Maybe you haven't started your retirement planning yet, but you want to have someone that you can call when you're ready to do that.
Definitely. Before we end, there's two things I want to hit on. And the first is going to be a tip that you mentioned before. Divorce like the wealthy. What does that mean?
You've been watching my TikToks, Joseph. So I always say to people, if you really want to do this the most effective way, spend the least amount of money, and receive the most amount of resources, you guys have to be on the same team. Now, that's not always possible. We have situations where there's abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse. It's not possible.
Yeah.
But that's not all of the cases that I see, particularly in mediation. When people come into the divorce or mediation table and they're on the same team, you have a different mindset. And the mindset is we want to try to both retain the most resources and not spend it on legal fees and not spend it on court fees and not spend it on two attorneys when we could be having one mediator, and really thinking about how are we going to preserve this money. And really, when I look around, it's some of the wealthiest people that I've represented, that my law firms have represented, they have spent the least amount of money on legal fees because they really came into this saying, listen, we're on the same team. We want the same result here. Most money for me, the most money for you, the most money for our kids, least money for the lawyers and the courts and all the other professionals. And that's really the best mindset
Right.
to go into it. But again, that takes, a certain amount of trust, a certain amount of amistad.
You also,
You know.
I remember you've also saying before, it's like, I don't care why you're getting divorced. Because
I don't.
divorce, because in New York State, there's just one thing, right? It's one thing that you're slapping on that piece of paper.
In 2025, correct. We are only looking at what you're going to do after whatever your grounds for divorce are. When I first started practicing, people spent insane amounts of money on grounds for divorce. We used to have grounds for divorce.
And by money, you mean legal fees.
Legal fees.
Billable hours.
Right. Drawing up complaints, talking about why the other person wasn't a good
So I
spouse.
should have been a lawyer in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because I would have just sat there and played therapist. He did what to you? And then just pull out the popcorn. And then what he do after that?
I've got a great accountant story to wrap this up with. that goes with the grounds for divorce. So we had to allege grounds for divorce, cruel and inhuman treatment, adultery, whatever the reason.
Right.
You had to put it on a piece of paper before you could get divorced.
Wow.
We would spend so much time and money on this. And often we would have a forensic accountant.
Wow.
And the forensic accountant always asked us for a copy of the complaint, the verified complaint with all of the grounds. And I once said to the forensic accountant, someone up in Albany, I said, why do you guys always need the grounds for the complaint and the grounds for divorce? How is that relevant to, how much this asset is worth? And you know what he said? Oh, it's not relevant. We have a very boring profession. We enjoy reading these.
Oh, my spirit animal. I would have been. Oh my God, my goodness.
And that's divorce and taxes,
it.
folks.
That's literally just unreconcilable differences. It is what it is. Let's move on. Let's get this over with.
That's right.
Before I let you go, and again, I thank you. I do have to tell our audience the reason why we did this video, this sitting, this episode, and it's because of how ethically I admire you. There was a time in my life that I came to you, and that's where our relationship changed. From gym buddies to I was like, I think I need to talk to someone. And I'll pay my legal fee, and I sat down here in this very room, and you treated me like a client, because we weren't friends yet. I was just another appointment. And you educated me a lot. And I remember leaving this room thinking I was in the most vulnerable state in my life. And you could have taken advantage of me. You could have said, retainers, X amount of dollars, we got this. You could have sold me the sell pitch. I can get you everything you want. But you didn't. Instead, you told me a story. And it was your story about your tree. Can you share that story one more time? The tree in front of your house.
Oh, okay. All right. So, sometimes I go with an analogy for clients. And I think that I told you this analogy. And the story is that when my husband and I got married, we got as a wedding gift a cherry blossom tree, which we planted in our front yard. And it grew very strong. And then as kind of coincides with when the kids came along, it was very difficult to feed and nourish this tree because there were a lot of other trees. We had baby trees that we had to take care of. We had to feed and water the baby trees. And so we forgot to feed our tree. We weren't nourishing it. We weren't watering it. And the flowers weren't really blooming so big. And one day we looked around and we said, listen, yeah, we've got baby trees, but you know what? Without this big tree, it's not worth a damn. You have got to spend some time and some effort nourishing the original tree. You've got to go out there, you've got to put the time in. You've got to put the fertilizer and put the food and go out and water it, even though it's been a hard day and a long day. Got to stand out there with the hose and water the tree. And we recognized that, and we did that, and the tree came back. And today, the tree is 26 years later. That tree is blooming. It's got baby trees. It's got grandbaby trees. And it because it takes, you've got to put some love and nourishment into it.
And that was 2020. I remember both of us sitting in this room with masks on. So it's like it was hard to read each other's faces or emotions. Mm-hmm. And I remember you looking at me and saying, you have two options. You cut down your tree or you fix it. And you looked at me and goes, you're not ready to cut down your tree. Yeah. And I left with that. That's what I left with. And it's amazing because, again, there's not that many professionals out there that are so ethical that would have seized an opportunity to say billable hours, billable hours. You gave me the rundown, and you stopped me in my tracks, and you're like, listen, you could ramble, but that's going to be another billable hour, or we can talk about things, and that's when I knew that I was in presence of like a really great person. And I'm so happy what
Oh,
you do,
thank
so much
you.
stuff pro bono for the community. You mean a lot to not just the town and city of Newburgh, but to Orange County, Dutchess County, where you originally came from. You're just an amazing person, and I thank you for having me today and for you
Thank you for having
doing
me on.
this with me today. And I hope to do this again real soon.
Yes.
Thank you,
Was
Mika.
fun. Thank you. Thanks, hon.
Cut.